Hello, everybody. Welcome to our recording session of February 15th. We are going to talk about ethos, pathos, and logos today since we did not have class on Monday, and my honors students on Tuesday are covering the same content for the time being. I opted to make a recording to send out to everybody. So our agenda for today is to discuss our calendar. We're going to do an overview of ethos, pathos, and logos, and then have time for a few announcements and reminders at the end. So to begin, we'll talk a little bit about our upcoming assignments calendar. So this week, obviously no school Monday. There are 3 lessons related to ethos, pathos, and logos embedded into the course on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. On Thursday, you'll have a multiple choice quiz on ethos, pathos, and logos related to Letter to Birmingham Jail, which you'll also be reading this week. We'll be starting to read MLK's speech, I Have a Dream, on Friday, and then there'll be an analysis handout where you'll color code different rhetoric, pieces of rhetoric, as well as different pieces of that particular speech, and that'll be explained on the document. The following Monday, so on the 22nd, we're going to go over that document, and we're also going to talk about our last assignment for Unit 1, which is an MLK Instagram assignment, and that will be due on Friday the 26th. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks here. To begin, we'll talk a little bit about rhetoric. So we introduced the topic of ethos, pathos, and logos, and many of you have different levels of familiarity and comfort with those pillars of persuasion, as they are called. And we'll talk a little bit more about what each of those is and explore some examples today. So first of all, just as a review, ethos relates to the character and credibility of a speaker or writer. It is basically where a speaker tries to present themselves as someone who has authority and has expertise in a particular area. Pathos relates to our emotions. So the little pictures of the heart here, it's basically those types of speeches we listen to, or perhaps commercials we see, or um, even political stories or stories of relatability where emotions are tapped into. So it's where we listen because we have kind of an attachment to the speaker for whatever reason. And then finally, logos is related to logic and reasoning, information that makes makes so much sense you must believe or buy it. So those are the 3 pillars of persuasion, and we'll talk a little bit more about each. So when you are approaching an audience as a writer or a speaker, ethos is the ethical appeal based on character, credibility, or reliability. And so a lot of times if you're going to try to tap into the ethos mode of persuasion, these are ways that you personally could establish good character and credibility as an author or speaker. So one way is to use only credible, reliable sources to build your argument and cite those sources properly. Another way is to respect your audience by stating the opposition position accurately. So acknowledging that there are more than one side to a particular issue. And then third step would be to establish common ground with your audience. This could either be by explaining your expertise in a particular area. It can also be done by acknowledging values and beliefs shared by those on both sides of the argument. So that's ethos. Pathos, emotional appeal, appeals to an audience's needs, values, and emotional sensibilities. This one, in some ways, is perhaps the most easy to identify because you can think about whether or not you, as a writer or speaker, or maybe someone you're listening to, is tapping into our emotions. So, argument emphasizes reason, but used properly, there's often a place for emotion as well. Can use sources such as interviews or personal stories to paint a more legitimate and moving picture of a reality or illuminate the truth. This is done oftentimes in political campaigns where there's an individual that tells the story of someone who went through hardship, and then this political figure has helped them in some way. One bit of advice is to only use emotional appeal if it truly supports the claim you are making, not as a way to distract from the real issue. So be careful to not use too much of this particular method of persuasion, or it becomes maybe too sappy. You become too emotional and not logical enough. Also, be wary of presenting an argument that misrepresents a topic or just frightens your audience. So, using fear mongering too much is also a bad way of using pathos in your writing or speaking. And then finally, logos, the appeal to reason, relies on logic. Sometimes that can include statistics and charts. Oftentimes depends on the use of inductive or deductive reasoning. And inductive reasoning, as a review, takes a specific case, situation, or facts and then draws generalizations or conclusions. And deductive reasoning begins with a generalization and then applies it to a specific case. So they're kind of like opposites in a way, but they're both useful when using logos. So that's an overview of how these may be used in your own writing. But we're going to do some practice and see if you can identify these. So since we're not meeting live, my recommendation here would be for you to try your best. I'll do a little bit of pausing myself, but you can also pause the video to see if you can guess these before I give away the answers. So first of all, ethos, pathos, or logos, which is this? As a doctor, I am qualified to tell you that this course of treatment will likely generate the best results. So this would be like a doctor telling you or your family about a particular course of treatment for, some sort of ailment. So I'll just pause for a minute and you can guess. So hopefully you all guessed ethos. So as a doctor, I am qualified. Basically, we would assume a doctor would be the best resource to use or the best individual to refer to when we are looking for medical treatment. Ethos is persuasion related to the credibility of this persuader. In this case, a doctor, a person that we would trust with our medical needs, is the persuader. All right, next one. Ethos, pathos, or logos. Number 2, you should consider another route. I heard that street is far more dangerous and ominous at night than during the daytime. So this is a word of advice that someone might be giving to someone else. So which of these 3 methods of or pillars of persuasion do you think this is? And this is an example of pathos. Pathos is persuasion related to the emotions of those being persuaded. In this case, the sentence initiates a fearful emotional response. We don't want to get hurt at night, so we will choose another route. So that's tapping into emotions. All right, third example. My 3 decades of experience in public service, my tireless commitment to the people of this community, and my willingness to reach across the aisle and cooperate with the opposition make me the ideal candidate for your mayor. We hear speeches similar to this very often. So which of the 3 types of persuasion do you think is best represented here? And this is actually another example of ethos. This is persuasion related to the credibility of the persuader. The statements above are qualities that garner a sense of trust in this candidate. We're persuaded to vote for him or her because of the information they gave about the fact that they're experienced in public service, they're committed to the people of the community, and they're willing to reach across the aisle, show that this person is someone who is credible and hopefully a person that will get your vote for mayor if that's what their hope is. All right, let's see here. Okay, number 5. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have not only the fingerprints, the lack of an alibi, a clear motive, and an expressed desire to commit the robbery, we also have video of the suspect breaking in. The case could not be more open and shut. So this is a statement, probably by a lawyer trying to convince the jury to vote in a certain way. This is an example of logos and the reason why. So think about this. Why is this an example of logos? What logic is used? So if you can go back into the statement, they're giving some specific examples. So the fingerprints, the clear motive, the desire, and then perhaps the biggest example of logos or logic would be the video that's presented as logically, if we have video of this particular suspect, then we could come to the conclusion this is a logical way to vote on this case. Okay. All right. Oopsie, I skipped here. All right, so when you are trying to identify in a piece of reading or a speech or whatever the case may be, which of those different pillars of persuasion are used, there's a couple strategies that are recommended. So first of all, you want to read or listen once for your initial impression. Sometimes it can be fairly apparent which of the three rhetorical techniques are used. Sometimes it may not be as clear. Second step would be to read it or listen several more times and then go back and annotate. And some of you are familiar with annotation, but basically taking notes on the margins, maybe just taking notes on a document, highlight some of the key terms. So sometimes the vocabulary can be something that gives away which type of persuasion is being used. You could also diagram or map to analyze structure. That would be more like a structure of a speech. Other suggestions would be to identify the claim, outline the reasons to support the claim. So are they using mainly logic? Are they using their case as a credible writer or speaker? Are they using cases related to appealing to emotions? What are the types of evidence used? Evaluate the adequacy and sufficiency of the evidence, and then think about what emotional appeals are used. Are they recognizing counterpoints? Things like that. Statistics are something that you have to be careful with. Sometimes they can be misused, manipulated, or misinterpreted. Oftentimes, statistics can be an example of using logos, but they're not maybe always trustworthy. Comparisons and analogies, reliability depends on how closely they correspond to the situation. And then relevancy and sufficiency of evidence. Is there enough of the right kind to support the claim? So here's one method that you might use. It's called the SMELL method, and it is used to analyze rhetorical strategies as well as those logical fallacies we covered last week. So we're going to go over this quickly. So the S stands for the sender or the speaker, the person sending the message out to be heard. So the receiver would be the audience, and that could be in many cases you. What is the sender-receiver relationship? So is it a politician trying to convince somebody to vote for them? Is it a doctor trying to tell somebody about a treatment plan? Is it somebody who is raising money for a cause? So think about that relationship. Who are the images, or what are the images? Who are the people involved? Which rhetorical appeals are used, and how are they meant to persuade? Next one would be message, and this relates to summarizing. What's the message? You can try to summarize. Third stands for emotional strategies, and that is referring to all of those persuasive techniques. So ethos, character, pathos, emotional, and logos, logic, and those can all fit into that category. Try to identify which is used. Language is also a key thing. Look at figurative language, look for specific words and phrases, and that can help you. You know, if they're referring to statistics and graphs and charts, that would lend it to logos. If they're referring to people's hardship, that would be referring to the pathos aspect. Or if they're talking about their experience and why they are somebody worth listening to, that would be related to the ethos category. All right, and then you would basically put that all together as a way to analyze and figure out how not only what type of persuasion is used, but how valid that argument or piece of writing is. All right, so we're getting down there. I wanted to keep this to 15 minutes. Last bits of information, use these strategies as you go over the MLK speeches this week. The quiz on Thursday is meant to be a self-check, so it's worth points, but it's not meant to be quizzing you in a way that it is like a pass or fail kind of thing. You can take it as many times you want. Your highest score will be recorded. Attend my optional sessions this week if you need help with any of the readings, and have a great week. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, reach out to me, and I will talk to you in our next whole group sessions later this week or next. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.